Hello friends, welcome back to another entry on the Controlatum Acute to coeducacio.acute.com website. My name is Sergio Castano and today we are going to continue with our MATLAB course for beginners. If you haven't seen the playlist for the entire course yet, here's the link so you can watch it from the beginning. In today's video, from the MATLAB course for beginners, we are going to see how we can name variables within the MATLAB environment. We have already done some basic MLA assignments, assigning numbers to variables, but we are going to see that MLAB does not accept just any type of names. So, in this video we are going to go into detail about the names that you can give to variables and also the names that you can give to script. If you remember, we saw scripts in the last video. If you haven't seen it yet, you know that the link is here. You know that you can find all this information on the Controlatum Acute to coeducacio.acute.com website. The link is in the video description. So let's start with the video. If you want, you can speed up the video so that the explanation is much faster or more dynamic. Well, friends, so in this video we are going to learn how to name the variables that we are going to assign within MATLAB and also how to name the scripts that we are going to start doing from now on. We had seen then that we could make simple assignments like t equals 3, and for example, we could put names, for example, area equals 23. So, we simply create a variable called area with the value of 23, and we already know that we have those two variables here in word space. But MATLAB is not going to allow us to create any type of variables because it already has established some steps that must be followed to name these variables that we do here in the command window, like area or t, and in the same way it has already been established how to name our script. So we are going to see what are the rules that we must follow. They are quite basic, so do not worry. So, the use of variables in more detail is that, first of all names must begin with a letter. That tells us that if we are going to create either a script or a variable, we must always start with a letter. It does not matter if it is uppercase or lowercase. For example, we can say force equals 54. We create a variable, so we see that it begins with the letter F, in this case uppercase. Here we create area, it begins with a lowercase letter a, so it does not matter if it is uppercase or lowercase. We must always start with a letter, both in our variables and in our script functions. If we are going to create, for example, a variable that begins with a number, it will give us an error. For example, resistance, we are going to save the number 21. It will give us an error because we are starting with a number. In the same way, if we start with a special character, for example, question mark, window, and we assign it a value of 10, we will get an error that we cannot start with any special character. The second rule is that names can be of any length, but from MATLAB 7 onwards, only the first 63 characters are used. That is, we cannot create very long names, we can only use 63 characters. Let's see an example. So, I created a giant super variable here that says, this is a very large variable that we are creating in MATLAB to see if it works and we are assigning it the value of 100. So, I'm going to get this error that we have exceeded 63 characters. He stored it, here we see it, but he cut it. If we double click it to open the variables window, here we have the variables window that has 100, we had already seen it, and we see that he cut it to where it counts 63. So the variable ended up as this is a very large variable that we are creating in MATLAB to see if fun, and he cut it to no continued it work. So we see that we can only use 63 characters. The third thing is that the only permissible characters are letters, numbers, and the underscore. It is worth noting that all of this also applies to the names that we are going to give to the scripts and functions. So we can create, for example, circle low 12, and we assign it a number 53. We see that we start with a letter. We can only include the special character low gu, and we can include numbers in our variables, as long as the numbers cannot go at the beginning, and the special character cannot go at the beginning either, and we cannot use another special character. For example, height exclamation mark 34, well, we see that the color change, that is, it is indicating an error equal to 23, well, we see that this is another rule that we must follow. The names are case sensitive. The variable x is different from the uppercase variable x. So, plus the difference between uppercase and lowercase, I can create a variable called kilo equals a 12. And I can also create another different variable, kilo, which is 21. So we see that here we have two variables, both are different. One begins with an uppercase letter, kilo in uppercase, and this one begins with a lowercase letter, kilo. So these are two different variables, plus the difference in uppercase and lowercase. There are some reserved words that cannot be used as variables. If you don't know what these words are, you can use this as keyword command to find out. Then there are some internal functions of M that we cannot overwrite and we cannot call them as variables. So if we put ISW in the list of variables that we cannot create, so we cannot create a variable called break, nor a variable called case, nor one called kuch, and so on. We cannot create these variables in our programming, because these variables that we are seeing here are only going to be used for programming. We will see that those names will appear in our programming. So, if I say try, which is a variable, and I tell it that I want to assign 12 to try, I'm going to get an error because it's already a reserved word in MATLAB. And finally, MATLAB allows you to reassign internal function names as variable names. MATLAB already has several functions built in that we can use to do many calculations. So, let's clear the CLC screen. So, for example, if we want to calculate the sign of a number, we simply call the sign function. Just like on a calculator, we put sign and in parentheses we put the number sign of 45. So it tells me it's 0.8509. Perfect. So now we know that +lap has a function called sign. But what does it tell us? If I don't want to create a variable called sign, then I tell it sign 76. It lets me create sign equal to 76. Perfect. But what happened here? What mistake did I just make? That I rewrote the sign function of +45 and created it as if it were a variable and saved this number 76. It means that if later in my code I need to calculate the sign of a number, Then we are going to calculate the sine of 45 here. Let's remember that to use a little bit what we saw in the previous videos, let's remember that by pressing the up key on the keyboard, I can recover the code functions that I executed previously. Up again, and here is S945. So, if I execute S945, since I just deleted it because I saved the number 76, we see here that sine has 76. So, if I now calculate the sine, which was a function of plus 45, well, it will tell me that no, that it exceeds the matrix, because we just deleted the sine function from mesh because we rewrote it and gave it a scalar number. So, you have to be careful with that too, because in order not to overwrite those functions, normally all of these are in English. So, here, simply to recover our sine function and be able to use it again, simply, if you recall, to clear these variables here with clear we cleared all the variables. But if I only want to clear the sine variable, then I say clear space and I clear the sine variable. So let's see that it's here in the word space, and when I press enter, the word sine, the sine variable, will be deleted. So, here I only clear the sine variable and there I can execute the sine of 45 function so that it calculates that mathematical operation for me. Done, friends. With this, we now know how to name our variables in MATLAB. Just like the variables, the rules also apply when we create our script. Write to me in the comments and tell me what you thought of this video. What strange variable names would you think of using in your codes? Share the video, like it, dislike it if you didn't like it, and see you in the next video of the MATLAB course for beginners. Have a great time. Bye. You can follow me on my social network. Subscribe to my channel by clicking on my photo and activating the notification bell. And don't forget to watch the next one.